The title of my talk is We Hold These Truths Not to be Self-Evident. And I want to come at that subject by starting with the question, what do we mean by the claim that the artist can be a nation builder? Isn't the real work of defining a nation done by geography, military conflict, political maneuver? Isn't the artist just a soft figure making the world a bit more pleasant perhaps, but not determining hard outcomes in the physical world, like defining and enforcing borders, building a strong military, ensuring that the economy grows? Well, to answer that question, I think we need some view on the extent to which myth matters to human life and society. By myth here, I mean not well-meaning but false stories. I mean efforts to orient man towards those non-empirical realities which both guide choices and promise to infuse his life with meaning and purpose. So to the person who says nations are not about myths, but about borders, military, and economic growth, I would ask in reply, why should borders be enforced? Who will serve in the military, and why would anyone do so? Why will people have the children that permit the economy to grow rather than shrink? So to sort of kick off this discussion, I want to start with a film clip from the movie Manhattan, which some of you may know. It's the opening series. Just in the interest of length, I'm going to just give us a little piece of this opening clip. But it's aimed at making concrete both the idea of myth and art. So if you will bear with me, this is about 90 seconds in which the narrator is talking about Manhattan.
And it always would be.
Okay, so Woody Allen, I think nothing could have been further from his mind when he made that movie than building the nation. His voiceover is ironic, but the sequence in total is not only a closely observed set of images of New York, but highly appreciative and ultimately celebratory. What he's doing is looking carefully at a physical thing like the city and trying to observe those non-physical properties about it that matter to him. Call it the spirit or the soul or the energy of the thing. The progression we watch in that sequence matches closely Burke's idea of the little platoons. For Burke, how do you love the big platoon that is the nation? You can only love something as big and abstract as the nation if you love the more concrete things that are closer to you. So what do we see in this sequence? We see the Yankee game. we see the Yankees and their fans in the stadium. That's a little platoon. Being a New Yorker is a slightly bigger platoon. You don't love these platoons just because they exist. You love them because of attributes and qualities that are unique to them. New York is a center of culture, of people with a particular quality of hustle and bustle. The spirit of New York embodies that of the nation. So we have in this sequence a distinctively American form of music communicating this. Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin, written in 1924, uses classical form, but also the distinctively American form of jazz to get across a kind of an energy of a country stepping exuberantly into an ever greater awareness of its energy and significance. And significantly, only after we see the little platoons of baseball, skyscrapers, the skyline of New York, the people in it, only then do we get to the fireworks celebrating the whole nation. We've had to establish a basis for loving the whole nation in these little platoons. So with that as an illustration, what I want to do is help unpack the traditionalist's idea of the artist. Let's just quickly review two streams of thought that will be familiar to anybody who's been attending these conferences: the traditionalist and the rationalist. And let's see what that might imply about art and the role of the artist. Let's agree also that these terms describe tendencies of thought, not logical rules, but root attitudes that help explain patterns in the viewpoints of certain political groups. The rationalist could, very broadly speaking, be associated with Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence. The traditionalist with the US Constitution, and early figures, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, and Noah Webster in his project to help define a distinctively American language. We associate the rationalist with an affinity for ever more global forms of government. A more domestic version might also be described as having a creedal understanding of the United States, meaning he thinks the government of the United States is not productively understood through unities discernible in people's affections, the language, religion, art, culture, or history of the country. The only unity that really matters is the political unity. As Paul Miller, who's right here in Yorktown, put it, the creed is ultimately not dependent on the culture. The creed could be summarized with the opening lines of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, self-evident is a very strong term. The principle that two contradictory claims can't both be true is self-evident. It is not self-evident that the Creator endowed people with rights. Set aside how the right to liberty could be declared self-evident by a person who owned several hundred slaves. What Jefferson seems to be getting at, and what this phrase seems to express, is a conviction dependent on the Enlightenment's understanding that educated people could understand politics and government in the same way that Newton had understood the law of gravity. Good government, like sound understanding of the physical world, discerned the rules by which the machine worked. Once they were adequately explained, only the willfully ignorant would fail to agree with them. Moreover, the rules are universal in application. Gravity doesn't vary from New York to Iraq, and neither do the rules defining good government. Moreover, just as Newton ignored air resistance to formulate his universal law of gravity, we understand these rules of government by abstraction from the specifics of human society and history. The nation is accidental and disposable. So is all culture. The key is that the state take the specific, universally valid form that has been discovered. Now let's remember or review several aspects of the traditionalist understanding of government. The model is not provided by a machine, but by real historical human communities. For the American founders, of course, the nation of Israel in the Bible was especially relevant. But the nation is understood by the traditionalists as a human community defined by much more than its form of government. The nation predates the state and is highly distinguishable from it. The government's legitimacy comes from its coherence with the nation, the customs, laws, and traditions that have existed over time. People's consent to the form of government comes not from a hypothetical contract, but is inferred from their adherence to laws and customs. What exactly is the nation? It is the big platoon, and it resembles the little platoons. Like all human communities, it needs a set of rules to function well, but with rules and nothing more than rules, it would wither. What gave it life originally and what sustains its life are an awareness among its members of agreed-on patterns of behavior, an awareness and appreciation for shared history, language, religion. These amount to something much more affirmative than an agreement to serve one's self-interest through cooperation, which defines the rationalist understanding of government. For the traditionalist, the essence and foundation of political society arises from affection for one another and shared convictions about what is good. The rationalist attitude to myth, then, is one of indifference. The government's precepts are, after all, self-evident. Their grip on the citizens is as permanent as the citizens' belief in the law of gravity. The rationalist attitude to myth can be looked at, we can sort of look at it three ways. Religion, here the founder's idea that religion is vital to the morals and self-confidence of the nation is wrong. Religion is, if anything, a threat. It always and everywhere tends to produce theocracy. What about the hero? We don't need heroes. What we need is an awareness of evil. On my block in Manhattan, there's a park on one end of the block, which was built about 75 years ago. It features a doughboy memorializing the sacrifice and the virtues of soldiers in World War I. At the other end of the block is a memorial built relatively recently to people who died of AIDS. It's in the shape of an insect, and it celebrates nothing. It mourns. Compare the Lincoln Memorial to the World Trade Center Memorial. The latter is a giant hole in the ground, memorializing not anyone's sacrifice, just the fact that people were murdered. What about art? As the AIDS Memorial suggests, rationalist art tends, like rationalist understandings of government, towards abstraction, and tends to abstract from its historic job of rendering daily life and places more beautiful. It moves towards the communication of concepts away from the service of decorating daily life. This does not mean that the artist is politically irrelevant in the rationalist understanding. On the contrary, the artist fills the vacuum created by the expulsion of religion and the hero from all spaces having to do with common life. The, quote, creative becomes both prophet and exemplar. His role in the life of the nation is not descriptive or celebratory, but prescriptive. The primary virtue of the artist is indignation. He negates what is in favor of what should be. So let's contrast the understanding of religion, the hero, and art within rationalism with that suggested by the traditionalist understanding of the nation. The government's health is to the traditionalist understood to rest on the integrity and unity of the nation. Nothing about the nation's community is self-evident or taken to be static. The traditionalist is highly conscious that the nation can lose heart or confidence in itself, just the way a person can. If there's going to be a nation, it's going to be composed of myths that affirm the goodness of the nation. To keep the nation from evaporating over time, the myths that sustain the nation need constant refreshment and renewal. So, with respect to religion, the traditionalist conceives religious belief as not only giving rise to the nation 200 years ago, but necessary today to animating and inspiring belief in the country. He does not share the rationalist view that religion in the West naturally tends towards theocracy. Heroes, distinctively American heroes and exemplars, are basic to inculcating habits and attitudes of affirmation. Heroes remind us that the myths describe reality, not fantasy. Trump's proposed heroes gallery reflects a characteristically traditionalist understanding of the centrality of heroes to the nation's self-confidence, which is itself essential to the nation's continuation. Art, the way to understand the role of the artist is to grasp the nation's dependence on myth. the traditionalist looks to the artist as much as the hero and religious belief to animate the nation's shared affections and self-confidence. But if distinctively American characteristics and places and attitudes that make the nation are to be celebrated and affirmed, they must first be carefully observed and then described. So just as the traditionalist's idea of political authority arises from carefully observing what customs and laws and habits are in place, his notion of the artist puts observation and description first and foremost. In both art and politics, the traditionalist is interested in careful observation of the physical thing in such a way that the soul or spirit of the thing becomes apparent. That's what we saw in the opening sequence there of the movie Manhattan. So the answer to the question I started with, the reasons to have and maintain a United States are not self-evident. The country requires priests and pastors, heroes and artists to make those reasons evident.